Welcome to Sega Saturn Shiro, the only podcast that uplinks to the world. Tonight's Shiros are Dave, Ben, Peter, and myself. And today we actually have a special guest, Jared from Project COE. How's it going tonight?
Very, very well. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
All right, so before we begin, while we do some personal updates, Jared, you're more than welcome to hop in with your personal update as well if you'd like as well.
Okay, I'll follow your lead. Go for it.
All right, so I guess I'll start us off. So, I guess one of the biggest things is that that we actually had some extended thoughts on the Satiator. I know we did the video on it, but I kind of had some post notes on that. So I kind of feel bad because I didn't realize that the firmware was technically a beta one, and that the product was still technically in some sort of beta when we did that. Because apparently was the case, because I said before that I didn't like the Fenrir because it was in a beta phase. So, and that it was being sold as a product, and I feel kind of hypocritical that I said the Satiator was really good in that regards when it technically is in a form of beta. So I have to apologize for that little miscalculation on my end and not realizing that. But yeah.
I mean, basically he ended up with a surplus of units after all the Patreon supporters got theirs and everybody had theirs. He ended up with over 1,000 units available for sale, and so, logic, his choice was basically, do I, go ahead and advertise this as an extended beta or just kind of say that they're ready for retail, And I mean, I guess that's where the confusion comes from, because a lot of the way that it was shared and everything is it's up, you can buy it now. It's open to the general public. So there's that idea that it's basically retail ready. The fact is it still is in beta. And I mean, he's not said anything otherwise, really. It's always been it's the firmware still in beta, the menu's still being developed. It's open source, of course, so people can add to it and make it better. But, really anyone who picked up on a Satiator, you're still kind of early days. There are going to be many more available. And, hopefully by that time, a lot of these things that we're helping to kind of provide feedback will be kind of worked out. I know I can say for myself anecdotally that I've had quite a bit of trouble with mine, but even just yesterday, I tried Nick's recommendation of, trying a different SD card. The one thing that I noticed actually is that all my SD cards were formatted exFAT. And I actually tried recently reformatting to FAT32, and that seemed to fix it or make it more stable, at least anecdotally, until I find that there is something else with it. But yeah, what about you guys?
Yeah, I in terms of that, the only other issue I ran into was I actually was playing Castlevania the other day and had an audio skip, it was skipping the audio and some of the background music. But I haven't updated my Satiator, so maybe if I do that with a new update that came out, I might be able to fix that. So I'll come back. But yeah, in terms of that, it's been smooth sailing for the most part with the Satiator.
Yeah, Abrasive just released firmware 157. Which does take care of some of the audio issues. So it's I know Mel, Sega Lord X, he's doing a review, and every time a new firmware drops, he's like, okay, time to start over and replay all these games and take notes, So it's it's just, but that's a part of it, people need to be aware that it is still in beta. Go join the Discord. And then if you have any issues with it, just be sure to tell him right away, because he's pretty much doing this as a full-time job and dealing with these things every day.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest cruxes with making a video like that, is that there's always going to be updates that makes a lot of stuff really out of date. So that's why we tried our best to keep it sort of more, I guess, evergreen, because we knew it was going to update and change things. So hopefully it stays as evergreen as we can, but, as all things, we'll see as the future moves up. But in terms of that and the Satiator, the other thing I was working on is I participated in Nick's virtual racing video that he just dropped, which is a hour-long video documentary on virtual racing, interviewing the guys behind it, or some of the programmer behind it, and talking a little bit about the game. And it was really interesting. I didn't see the full thing until he released it, so I thought it was really well done, and I had really thought it was funny hearing my voice coming through his videos, because I'm used to just listening to them and hearing his voice, but hearing my voice, like, oh, well, that's interesting, you know. But besides that, and adult things, and doing different cryptocurrency stuff, it's all good on my end. How about you, Peter?
Well, lately I seem to be obsessed with picking up different Saturn board revisions, and so I recently bought a Saturn unit that was built in 1994, so it was one of the first units off the production line. I'm still waiting for it to ship to me, but I'm kind of excited for it to come. It's a VA0. It's a board revision 0, the very first board revision. And for those of you that don't know, the Saturn board was revised several times as the years went on, and it ended up going all the way up to board revision 15 by the time the very last units were produced in 1998. And there's, various incremental differences with these boards, although ultimately functionality remains pretty much the same across all the different units. Anyways, so I have a bit of a fetish with picking up different Saturn board revisions, and so I'm probably going to go and try for at least one of each Saturn board revision. And, there's nothing really special about that. It's just a way for me to sort of geek out. On the gaming front, I've been playing through the English translation of Revolutionary Girl Utena, story of the Someday Revolution. It's pretty cool. It's the first time I've actually played a visual novel / dating sim, and it's certainly an interesting story. And, the game's got me interested enough that I started watching bits and pieces of the anime upon which the game is based, and it's a very interesting genre that has no representation at all in the West. We got no visual novels or dating sims, so it's really interesting experience that a lot of people haven't had on the Saturn, and so it's it's a lot of fun. The last thing I want to mention is that I've kind of been looking, I've got a Japanese X-band modem as well as a US Netlink modem. But I've yet to take my Saturns online, so I think that this is something I'm going to have to work on in 2021. And I want to pick up another couple of Saturn Netlink modems because I want to set up some phone line simulators and to be able to do some local, in the same room, head-to-head over Netlink games such as Sega Rally or Duke Nukem or even Virtual On. I mean, imagine two players going head-to-head in Virtual On, each with their own screen and each with a pair of, twin-stick controllers. I think that would be rad. So anyways, yeah, that's about it for me.
Yeah. Did you finish Revolutionary Utena, or are you still working through it?
And no, still playing through it.
I gotcha. Did you meet the one really nasty girl that really hates you for some reason?
So you probably mean Chigsa, and I mean, yeah, I've met her. I'm not far enough in the game yet to really understand her motivations and everything. And as far as I know, she wasn't even she wasn't in the original anime. So, anyways, as I keep playing, I'll sort of see where that weird relationship leads. There was actually not too long ago in the game, there was I needed to go shopping for some school supplies or whatever, and I had to pick who to go to market with shopping, and I picked her, and she was kind of cold and sort of, I don't know, not the friendliest person to go shopping with. So anyways, but yeah, other than that, I'm still kind of working through the game. I mean, I'm just learning about the duels and the Rose Bride, and why fencing is so important, and why Utena is such a important character, and so on. So yeah, still kind of working through it.
Gotcha. I won't spoil anything for you in that case. I really need to watch the anime though. I played through the game on a Shiro live stream. It should be on the YouTube page if anyone wants to watch it. But I go through the entire game, and wow, it's definitely different than I expected it to be. Is all I'm gonna say. So we'll see on that. But what about you, Mr. Dave?
For me, not much. Just the most major thing recently was just the uplink panel that we did with Tom Kalinske. That was super fun, something that we kind of were prepping for a while. We ran into a few little technical difficulties, but on the whole, it was really enjoyable. And I mean, it was definitely an experience of a lifetime talking to Tom. And I mean, we were, of course, super, super glad to be invited on by Jared, Project COE, who's with us today. Just can't thank you enough for that opportunity. And it was definitely something that I'll remember, and that's really the biggest thing for me. Other than that, just streaming, and then, parenting and stuff, but nothing
Gotta
really
be a dad.
that could eclipse that,
Fair enough. All right. What about you, Ben?
All right, so me, I've actually been doing a lot of some like Switch and Nintendo pickups. So I've basically picked up some Everspace. I actually got to talk to the developers of this game when I was at PAX East a couple of years back, and I'm heavily looking forward to Everspace 2. I got a chance to play that. It's a lot of fun. I picked up Breath of the Wild, and the reason I picked it up so late is I actually have this for the Wii U, and I've actually been playing it for that, but I've never had it for the Switch yet, so I picked that one up. So, and then the last one is Puyo Puyo Tetris 2. And so I haven't gotten much feedback on this one other than the fact that I like Puyo Puyo Tetris 1, I guess you would say. And I'm kind of curious what they would do with the second one, because the first one is so much fun to play. And I just can't wait to just take this on with other people on the couch and see what we can do with it. Aside from that, I did the Guardian Force stream, which got me wanting to play the arcade machine some more, and I've been having a lot of fun with that. And then we also did the experimental stream with me and Dave, and where we were basically doing like some green screening and trying that out to see how well that would work, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. And so yeah, that's basically what's been going on my end.
Nice. Yeah, I actually just got Breath of the Wild on vinyl. They actually released a quote-unquote bootleg version of it, and I picked that one up, and it's pretty nice sounding. I think I have it on my Instagram, on Trainoko, and on my Twitter. So if you guys want to check that out, just go there, and I'll probably post like a link to it in the chat. But it's really good. I like the soundtrack to Breath of the Wild, and I think it's probably one of my favorite Switch games as of yet, right now. So yeah, definitely recommend picking that one up. And I really want to try the ones that Ben recommended. Those look pretty fun. All right, so what about you, Jared? What have you been up to since we last talked at the panel?
Not much at all. Unfortunately, what I call real life has basically just been absolutely insane. But like Dave said, I think our panel discussion with Tom Kalinske, that was a true highlight. I haven't done much gaming in the last, about a year. Ever since COVID hit, I've been absolutely just flooded, and that's why my YouTube channel's like pretty much dead now, because I just haven't had a chance. But that was worth it, like that was really, really worth it. And I'm so happy I got the opportunity to invite you guys over to that. And personally, I think it was an absolute blast. But before we move on, just wanted to say about Peter, because you mentioned about the Netlink adapters and stuff like that. I remember the first time I actually managed to get that up and running was probably around, probably like 10, 15 years ago now. I don't even know if the Netlink boards are still around, but back in the day, you used to go there. It was just like a, really, really simple message board. And you used to just go there and you'd have like, one or two people that were like the most diehard of diehards. And anyways, that was a really surreal feeling after all those years to actually get that thing up and running. And I mean, it's because it's peer to peer, there's no lag, there's no nothing. It was amazing. Yeah. So when you actually do get that up and running, that's a real surreal experience when you realize, like you could have done this like 20 years ago or whatever. Like it's wild.
I was telling Peter though, it's crazy when you get so good at like Sega Rally, like vanilla Sega Rally on a D-pad, and then you fire up like Sega Rally Netlink, which is tuned for the 3D control pad, and you start sucking really bad because you're just like, wait a second, I'm not turning when I'm supposed to turn, or like this isn't handling exactly as I, was bragging that I was a pro about, So like I was playing Zaiden on one of our streams, and we're doing the over VoIP thing, and it still works really well. It works actually much more so today than it did when we were streaming it, because they've made advances with that whole thing. But yeah, like some of those games are just tuned for the 3D analog pad, because the 3D analog pad sends like continuous input. And because it sends continuous input, the space between packets, it's able to discern more information than just a binary like D-pad input on or off or left or right. So I guess a lot of those games, even Virtual On, are kind of tuned to use the 3D analog pad as it sends data more frequently. And so, that was one of those things where it was kind of hard for me to get used to when it comes to the Netlink. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, like you say. Jared, just out of curiosity, have you tried Shadows of the Tusk? Like, had you ever played that over Netlink?
I will lie to you if I say yes or no. I honestly
can't remember.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I doubt it. I don't think so, but I don't know. I used to be so hardcore with this that it was, and I'll apologize in advance to anyone who happens to hear something in the background, my little kitty. But yeah, I used to be so hardcore with this, which we'll get into, and
absolutely.
You'll see why I don't remember some of this.
All right, so why don't we go into the interview portion of the podcast, and we were talking with Jared Nickel, a.k.a. Project COE. So I guess I'll start off. What is your Saturn story? How did you really come to love the console?
All right, well, my story, like just about, I'd say most Saturn fans, starts with the Sega Genesis. Just was a hardcore Sega Genesis fan from, the very beginning with the original model all the way through to, my goodness, it feels like they had 40 models. But I'd say like when Mortal Kombat hit, my brother and I became hardcore Sega fans. It's amazing what blood will do. And so basically just became hardcore Sega fans from that point forward. I mean, we had a Master System, had Game Gear and all that stuff, but we really, really became hardcore Sega fans around the time when Mortal Kombat came out. We were still Nintendo fans, and I mean, even Project COE as an entity actually stems from Nintendo, not from Sega, which is kind of funny. But it was just like so many people, you were picking up EGM and other magazines like that, and they were talking more and more about this next gen. And so basically picked one up at launch. I have my launch model, still have the box, everything. And I think I mentioned to you guys, I actually still have a few of different Saturn models over the year that are still sealed, that never even opened. And there's a whole story behind that, which we can get into. But I basically... that was around the time when I just started working. I think I started working a little bit before that generation began. So like I had quote unquote adult money, right? Like, so now sure. I could actually buy stuff, and I was affiliated with a store we had here in Montreal called Microplay, and that got me access to more games than you could possibly imagine. So so basically I've been a Saturn fan since day one.
Nice.
So what is your absolute favorite Saturn game, and why did you come to love this game?
Oh, no. I knew you were going to do something like that. Okay, yep. So this might be a little bit generic, okay? But like I said, I just fell in love with the Saturn, okay? That time period was also when I got hardcore into importing. Like really, really hardcore. There was a point where, playing something like X-Men versus Street Fighter, that was like an event here. And it's really hard to explain that because most people, depending on the age, you didn't grow up with arcades. And I'm going to jump around here. I will get to your question, but it's relevant. So I grew up as a kid, playing in the arcades. Like that was just what it was. When Street Fighter 2 hit the arcade scene, I mean, I still have Polaroid pictures. Yes, Polaroid pictures showing like just tons of teenagers like just waiting and like lineups going around the block just to get into the local arcade just to play a couple of rounds. People don't know what that's like today. Like kids will never experience something like that. And it's kind of sad because there is no equivalent to that today. You know, like esports, sure, you've got your esports, but it's not the same. So anyways, for the longest time, it was, and I still think it is, you know, like X-Men versus Street Fighter is probably my favorite Saturn game for like in the context of that competitive scene, playing with other people, but one-on-one, like just for me, single player. I'm going to do like the cheesy sort of cop out here. Panzer Dragoon Saga blew my mind. That absolutely blew my mind. It's the story of why I say that I think is at least for me, okay? And guys, like I don't know when you guys got into Saturn, okay? But if you were there day one, you know that like it was exciting, especially if you were an arcade fan like I was. Yes. And that was the whole thing of why you bought Sega consoles, was you didn't buy them for Final Fantasy VII. Like that's just not what Sega was doing. And they were making arcade games like that. That was their whole raison d'être.
Exactly. I mean, and that even extends to like the Dreamcast too. I mean, there's only like a handful of those on there. Yeah,
exactly. So picture this, right? 1998. By now, the industry has sort of moved on, right? So you've got, and when I say that, I mean like these single player or console games have really started to like take over. Arcades are now like slowly dying. And on the PlayStation, everyone's hyping up Metal Gear Solid. Like everybody's hyping this up. It's going to be like the biggest thing since sliced bread. On the Nintendo 64, you got The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
That's it.
And on the Saturn, you have and then this is where I'd edit in a sound effect and be like, pumping on the brakes. What's a Sega Saturn? And that was the reality that I lived, was that I was really looking forward. I loved Panzer Dragoon. I love that series. And the idea of like turning that into an RPG was really exciting to me. Like that was really, really, really something. And yet I swear to you, I felt like the only guy in the world that gave a crap.
Boy, do I know how that felt.
Yeah. And it was the absolute worst. So I think the fact that like I was the only one who seemed to care about it, everyone in the world was going nuts over Metal Gear Solid, everyone's going nuts over Ocarina of Time, and then here I am, the biggest nerd, going absolutely nuts over Panzer Dragoon Saga when I finally got a chance to play it. And it was just so surreal. It was like, wow, this is actually here, this is actually awesome, and nobody knows. Absolutely.
It's like you say, what's your favorite game? Oh, I've really been enjoying Panzer Dragoon Saga. And they give you like the squint look and they're like, Panzer what Saga?
I totally relate to you, Jared. I know exactly what you're talking about. I was not there day one. I was like 96. Christmas 96 was when I got in, and I got in for nights, but nights in Daytona. But I can relate to you, because I used to go to this electronics boutique, which I think you guys have in Canada too, like EB Games. Yeah. It was electronics boutique in the mall for me. And it was like they just had, you'd have to walk all the way to the back. And there was this paltry little wall of Saturn games. And it was really sparse. Basically, I was the only one buying them. So like they would deplete and disappear. And then there was nothing. They wouldn't restock this wall. So I'd keep going back to this store to look, and it's like when a game like Enemy Zero would show up, and that thing was heavy because it was like 4 discs. You felt like it was, you felt like it was the Idol in Indiana Jones. You're just like, oh, there's all these other games around here that, and I'm this weird kid that wants like Enemy Zero or Panzer Dragoon Saga, so I can relate to you because I do remember what that was like, I
remember that was like a 2-order game here.
Yeah,
and
you had to.
That's it. Like there was no, like even our EB Games or equivalents here, like there was no Saturn like section by I'd say mid to late 1997. It was all gone. Everything was gone. And like the clearance sales had long happened. And 98, to even mention Saturn, people were just like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about? And it didn't get any better with Dreamcast, to be honest with you, because I was the same kid going in there for Shenmue 2. And the guy was like, you got to buy something else. You know, I'm not going to order this for you. You know, it was crazy. Like, I bought the only copy of Shenmue 2 that store stocked. But yeah.
But hey, at least you got Shenmue 2, right?
Yeah, and then I stupidly sold it.
Oh no!
That is
a story for that is a story. No, well, my brother and I fired it up, and we were like, "Wait a second, it's just subbed, and it's not." I did not get it back. I wish I had. I'm sorry, but okay. So, Panzer Dragoon Saga is not a cop out. I don't care how much it goes for today. I got it for like $25 on clearance at Toys R Us, and I think that was even more than it ended up dropping down to like the bargain bin or something like that.
$2.99.
Something like that. So I've heard some folks say they got it for like $10. I'm like, seriously? Now you're just bragging. But I don't think it's a cop. I don't think it's a cop out at all. I think it's a great game, and I think that if you were used to arcade games and that was kind of your cup of tea, Panzer Dragoon Saga, playing that game for the first time, it's just completely different, you know. And it's a great game. I had a blast playing it for the first time. But moving on, I just wanted to ask you, Jared. So we heard about your Saturn story and your favorite game, and you mentioned a little bit about owning a store, or and having access to a bunch of Saturn stuff early on. So obviously that fed your, that's how you were able to supply the Saturn itch. But I want to know, how did it go from that to getting you into like creating videos and content related to the Saturn? Like, how did that all start?
Okay, sure. So yeah, just to give some context. So yes, so basically I was like co-owner of a store here in Montreal that allowed me, think of it like an EB Games. Okay. It really was. It was something like that here. And it was a very local store. And as you all know, you don't make any money on new games. So we started specializing in Atari, NES. So we had a distributor here in Montreal that I don't know if this is actually legal back in the day or not, but way back, the Hollywood movies, before they came to home entertainment, you had a grace period usually of 6 to 8 months. So what does that mean? Well, a movie like the one that I always talk about is Back to the Future 2 or Back to the Future 3 comes out in the cinema. Everybody goes, whatever. Then it comes out for Blockbuster, like all your rental chains. And you couldn't actually buy the movie for months and months, sometimes even a year. That's how it worked back in those days. They had exclusivity over the sort of rental period. And because I got access to that distributor, I was able to get my hands on all kinds of clearance stuff. And in particular, because I fell in love with the Saturn, and it just so happened to die pretty much upon arrival, your big chains like your Toys R Us started clearing that out ridiculously early. Like, I know that people are like, oh, 97 was a good year. Well, not here. It wasn't a good year for them. And they started clearing out way back then, and no one was buying this stuff. So because we had the store and we were like, well, we're selling used games and stuff like that, why not? And I'll never forget that we paid like $1,000, something like that, in 97, 96, 97, 98, somewhere in that range. And we paid like $1,000, and that got us access to something like, I'm not joking, like probably 20,000 games. Something like that, like just warehouses full of just games on pallets. And we thought this was all, stuff that no one would want. But I told you guys before, like we had a pallet of like Panzer Dragoon Sagas, like that, just an entire pallet. It must have been like 400 or 500 copies of the game or something like that. That most likely like all of Eastern Canada didn't want, and they just were like, okay, well, here, guys, if you're willing to buy it, here you go. And that was so common back in the day. And like I said, in terms of legality with the whole VHS stuff, I don't know, because they used to sell those VHS movies the second Blockbuster got. So let's say like that Back to the Future part 2 or 3, as soon as Blockbuster got it, you could actually go to this distributor, pay $300 and buy a copy. And you'd have it like a year before anyone else. But again, I'm not sure how legal that was. So I'm not going to say any names.
That sounds like that sounds like the most expensive VHS ever for a new one, $300.
Oh, you should have seen what they did with Laserdisc back in the day, but I digress.
Don't get me on that. I'm a big Laserdisc collector for anime stuff, and even now it's tough.
Well, that's it. So this place was like a gold mine, okay? So what does that have to do with videos? Absolutely nothing. But it's just to give some context of how I got access to some of this stuff. But I was looking around and I was like, oh, this could be kind of cool, like talk about games. Project COE itself started, believe it or not, do you guys remember the Insider message boards Nintendo used to have years and years and years ago?
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was one of their sages. I was one of their first sages that they had, which is sort of like a site moderator, if you will, or a board moderator. And a bunch of us got together and said, like, you know what, why don't we just do something ourselves? So we created this really god-awful website, and we started covering just random games. And then that evolved into YouTube. And my good buddy, Steven, he would focus all kinds of our content on Nintendo. And I was like, well, there's another company, that we could talk about. And when I went online and started looking for videos, I was like, wow, like there is nothing out here, like YouTube pretty much had virtually nothing in terms of Sega Saturn content, or at least not much, and not the best quality. Like it looked like, like, I don't know what capture devices people were using back in the day. So I was like, we could do a better job than this. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not a graphic artist. I'm not a video editor. That's not at all what I am. But I was like, I really want to talk more about this console. So that was pretty much it. So started showing a couple of videos here, there, some really god-awful stuff at first, and then slowly, equipment evolved. And I remember one of the very, very first videos I ever did was on Shining the Holy Ark. I love that game. And I remember like people were like, what the hell is this? They're like, it looks so much like Golden Sun. And I'm like, well, there's a reason for that. and so that was it. And it just started making videos on it and talking to people. I mean, you guys, like people like you, like you guys, you blow my stuff out of the water. But it was nice that it sort of like lit a spark. And I don't want to say that we're responsible for any of this, because who knows, but I just know that like we were at the right place at the right time, and more and more people started to talk about this little system that no one had ever heard about before. And if I had anything to do with helping light that spark, mission accomplished. And I'm super, super happy with it. And there you go.
Yeah, you did. I mean, I can vouch for myself, at least, that like I was watching your videos. Sorry to age you, but a decade ago or more, and I was just like, I love it. Like, everything that comes out, everything he says, I feel like I'm that guy, I'm not the one making the videos, but like, I totally know what you're talking about. I mean, granted, you're even more hardcore. Like you were there day one. I was a big Sega Genesis fan too, but like I didn't make that connection right away because unfortunately Sega's marketing failed me, and some people were just more with it than others. Like, but I did finally catch on in 96. And then the rest of the narrative that you paint, about, the clearance bins and just like what it was like to be a Saturn fan in those days, I literally can, that resonates with me on a huge level. And I just remember thinking like, why aren't more people doing this? Why we all have phones, we all have a way to shoot video or like do, chats now. Technology is kind of caught up and like, I don't want to be that lone kid who went hunting for Saturn games and didn't have anybody to share them with, basically. So, lo and behold, a podcast pops up, and now this community I feel like has really kind of gotten together, and we all kind of know each other. We all know what everyone's doing in this community. But yeah, no, your content was like some of the first content to really inspire me and a lot of other people to get into this console or to create content about this console. So yeah.
Thank you, and I'm really happy to hear that. It makes me feel good. And it's funny, you say like 10, 12, 15 years ago. If you go back and watch some of my early like Panzer Dragoon Saga videos, I think I mentioned like, oh, it's like $250 now. That's crazy and stuff like
Yes.
that. Like,
yeah, I do remember that. That game has gotten
only-
out of control over the last. I was arguing with some guy on the forums in 2017. He was trying to charge like $400 for it, and I was arguing he's ripping you off or like that. And now it's like people would beg to pay $400.
It's like what, at like 1,200 right now, 1,500.
Panzer Dragoon Saga has literally gotten out of control, and I can't believe that I cannot believe that I was concerned about $400 when I didn't have the foresight to realize that it was going to end up being like $1,200 within just a few years.
Yeah, $1,215. It's crazy though. Like, I mean, I wonder how much of that is due to COVID and how much of that is due to it just going up, because like it wasn't even that expensive a year ago, wasn't it? It was like maybe in the $500 to $700 range still.
I think that's why so many people don't like it now. Like there's a lot more hate for it, but I think it's because some of the people that don't like it paid hundreds of dollars for it when you really shouldn't do that.
And you can't judge a poor game that has to stand up against that. You can't judge a game based on that. Just like with like I really appreciate your sorry if this is a tangent, but I'll be quick. I appreciate your mention of the Hidden Souls review. I thought it was really fair, even though you kind of ended up saying, like it's not really that good. But I mean, at least you're not at the time. A lot of the games journalists would just basically poo-poo it or dismiss it just on the grounds that it was FMV and that was kind of like not in vogue, or it was becoming not in vogue anymore. And it's like you just kind of have to like rate a game based on what it brings to the table, whether it's good or not, whether it does a good job. Telling a story and giving you an entertaining experience, which I think Panzer Dragoon Saga definitely does. But
oh yeah, for sure. And if you're paying hundreds of dollars for it, hopefully you're doing it because you just want it in your collection, not because you think that's how much you should pay to only play it and not do anything else with it.
And that's what I like about the stuff like the Satiator and all these other stuff, all the ODEs, so that we can actually play these games and not have to spend a bajillion dollars to be able to play all the games on the Saturn.
And I just wanted to say that if you think this is like bad, if you are a Neo Geo AES fan, I just have to say, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, just peace out. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a gateway to that.
Like our whole chat about Panzer Dragoon Saga and how you were screaming about it and nobody was interested in it because, everyone was all about Metal Gear and Ocarina. Like I was in exactly the same situation, so I needed to call that out. You're playing this game and thinking, how does nobody else know about this game? This total treasure, and you can't find it. Nobody's talking about it. In my case, I had a local video game store that I would buy things from, and I was acquainted with the owner, and he was going to E3 at the time, and he asked me whether, I wanted him to get me anything, and I said, yes, find me Panzer Dragoon Saga, and he did. And so, for under $100, I ended up paying for it. I still have my copy to this day, but that's how it was back in the day. People just wouldn't know, and, you wouldn't know it, that a few years later, I was watching the Project COE video about Panzer Dragoon Saga. So, with that said, I want to know, Jared, what has been your favorite Saturn video that you've made and why? Like, why was it your favorite? What made working on it so special?
For me, it was really, I love education. I love history. I'm a huge buff of history, in fact. And, like the gaming historian, if I had the skills to actually like make videos like that, I would totally do something like that. Like that's right up my alley. And I think like Gene, which for everyone who's listening, he's one of the folks that put the Uplink conference together that we were a part of. And he singled out one particular video that I did where it's super simple. It's nothing fancy at all. It's literally just me talking about what it was like being a Saturn fan in 1998. And it's continuing with this thread, and because I love history so much, that was actually one of my favorite videos. And I know it's so ridiculous, right? Like, it's just a camera right in my face, no editing, no nothing, no script. But those are my favorite types of videos, where you just talk about your personal memories. Like, I have a couple of videos that I've done on like arcades, for example, because I'm sad that a whole generation will never get to experience anything like that. And it's really sad. Like, I find it truly, truly sad. But specifically with like the Saturn, like that video where I talked about what it was like, like the last handful of releases, and the fact that for all intents and purposes, like those games never even needed to come out. And how sad is that? So another one that I really enjoyed like putting together was I mentioned before about like Netlink, and I played like Duke Nukem and did it all live, like actually set it up, had someone, and like I phoned them in and the whole thing. It must have been like one of the only videos at its time that existed of like an actual live match that someone had done, because this was like 12 years ago or something like that. And
this was like legit over analog phone lines.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Like legit. And
that's cool.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty awesome. And again, for me, it's the history. It's the historical context that I was trying to show people, that was like, listen, like these games legitimately, like without any, like third-party software, any cracking, any hacking, anything, these games will work forever. As long as you have a landline, if you don't want to do any sort of, finagling of anything else, like these games will work forever and ever and ever and ever. And that's what I wanted to prove, was like, here, let's just go. I'll walk you through how this actually works. And I just love that. I just love being able to do things like that. That's why I love so many of your guys' videos where you talk about different games, like, the name escapes me right now, but that MMO, that was brilliant. Game. Yeah, exactly. Like that was totally brilliant. Where it's like, oh my God, I remember that, and I'm like looking through my boxes and I'm like, got it right here. I'm like, and those are my favorite types of videos.
Well, let's jump ahead. That's actually Pat's next question when he was up, was talking about Dragon's Dream. You mentioned that you played it. Pat.
Okay, so that would have been like, I've been to Japan quite a few times, especially due to I do a lot of consulting, and so I have a lot of business that's actually done in Japan. Not so much anymore these days, but back in the day, which is where I got access to all of my sort of Japanese online software, shall we just say. And so I'm almost 100% sure, because when I saw those videos that you guys had posted, I was like, oh my gosh, like this really brings me back, because I had friends of mine, right, that lived there, and they would walk me through all kinds of different software. So yeah, I quote unquote played it, but it didn't, wasn't here and just like jamming out to it or anything like that.
I was going to say, yeah, how would it be possible to do that in the United States? Was it even, were you able to connect to that connect to even that service specifically?
I doubt very much, because like even if you had, I'm not a technical whiz like you guys, but I doubt that would have even been possible.
I mean, you probably could have, but it probably would be extensive. Like it'd be long distance calling, and it'd probably be the most expensive MMO of all time that you can't understand or play.
You would have had to have the Japanese modem though, with the card.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
You'd have had to have the service. There were like three different things involved, besides like your touch-tone phone fees. It was crazy. From the research that I've done. But then again, I've never actually played the game beyond, the start screen. So I think that's really rad.
Yeah, I just wish that like 15, 20 years ago, maybe even like a little more, like I just really wish like I would have like realized then what I know now, and just even if I would have taken like a camcorder or something like that, would have been awesome, because there's so many things that like I've experienced, not just with the Saturn, but in Japan there's just so much stuff, like just so much stuff. And now I think like because of people like what you guys are doing, and other people are doing the same sorts of things with different consoles or different technologies. I think slowly but surely more and more stuff is going to come out, and I'm dying. The truth is, I'm really dying to go back into my storage one of these days and dig out some of these videos, because I did take a ton of video, and I'd like to go back and rewatch some of these things to see, like, did I capture something like that? Without ever even realizing I was capturing it back in the day, because I'm sure there's some good stuff there.
That's pretty cool, though. So you just basically just played it over a friend's in Japan house, somebody in Japan's house?
Yeah, exactly. So like I'd go down there for like a week for business, and then I'd take another week for quote unquote vacation, and I'd basically just geek out. That's basically all I would do.
Yeah, but what was? I mean, the landscape must be a lot of fun because all the arcades were still open. They had all the Blast. Was it Astro or Blast Cities back in the day? That'd be there.
Blast City, yeah.
Blast City was just new, right?
Yeah, and one thing I gotta mention, I know you guys know me like from like the Saturn stuff, but the other thing, my other big thing was Dragon Quest. That's like I'm one of the only people like back in the day that was actually playing Dragon Quest X, and giving like an English commentary and stuff. That's one of the major reasons why I would go to Japan. Was for Dragon Quest launches. I have so many pictures and videos of all the, hundreds of thousands of people lined up and stuff. There's nothing like
as big as Dragon Quest.
Yeah, there's really
they're crazy about it.
Were you just like the only American there, just chilling out? It's like
pretty much.
It's like just sticking out like a sore thumb. It's like oh, you here for Dragon Quest? It's like can you actually play the game? It's like yeah, I can play it.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to go to the Sega amusement park when you were in Japan? They had a Sega amusement build. It was like an amusement park, but it was like
no, I know what you're talking about.
Like that. Yeah,
it was like 5 levels, which is well, that's a whole other thing we won't.
That's like
yeah, that might be out of scope.
Sega was like everywhere though, guys. Like especially in Japan. Like again, there's no equivalent to this here, but like you'd walk in and they would have like. Their arcades would be like say 7 floors, and like Sega would be an entire floor, would just be all the different Sega arcade cabs and stuff, and it was amazing. If I can ever find any pictures, I'll gladly share with you guys, because I think you'd get a real kick out of just seeing how big they were.
Yeah, and I imagine our viewers would love to see something like that as well, and maybe like just like something on Twitter, like, oh, hey, picture of the day. This is a picture that Jared sent us with.
Send any images or footage you have to Nick, because he'll weave that stuff into.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't mind some B-roll as well. That'd be kind of some nice stuff.
Yeah,
definitely got to digitize it at some point. Just for the sake of keeping it in the, I guess, archives of digital history. On some, it sounds like you experienced a lot of cool video game activity from Japan back in the 90s. So. Speaking of digging up those tapes, so is that in the same storage room as like your like giant massive collection of like Saturn and PS1 games, or is that in like somewhere else?
Yeah, no, it's all there. I have a storage.
What can you tell us like about that collection? And maybe like I know you probably don't have an exact number, but roughly how many would you say are in there? And what are some of your favorite items from that giant treasure hoard of PS1 and Saturn games you got in there?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, in terms of numbers, I honestly have no idea. It was never cataloged. So basically what happened when I first moved out into my own place, my own little apartment there, it was a little apartment, right? And because of the store, we had made an arrangement where we would just store stuff, right? Like the store that we had was just this really, really small sort of like front end thing and a little back office in the back, but you couldn't really store anything there, right? So we were paying a monthly fee for like just a regular storage locker, the stuff you see on TV and stuff like that. I'm sure you guys have experienced this in your life when you want to move or things like that.
Sure.
And so, so anyways, like, like a great example is like when PS2 came out, right? We got like, 60 of them or something like that. That's probably a terrible example. We probably ended up with 5 knowing Sony, but whatever. The point is, like you needed a place to store this stuff overnight and stuff, someplace that was secure. So that's where the storage locker came in. And when we sold the store, we didn't sell any of the inventory. So we just basically sold the IP. We just sold like the name and whatever was on site. So at the end of the day, I ended up with like this massive, storage locker that was filled with just tons and tons and tons and tons of games. And I mean, I have a near complete or a complete PlayStation 1 collection across, so like a black label collection.
Jeez.
That's a lot of games.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nuts.
The same would be true for N64, Super Nintendo.
No,
dude. I think Genesis as well, it's way, way, way up there in Saturn, of course. N64, that would have been the last, right? That would have been like the end. So yeah. So
when we come over your house again?
Well, it's not my house.
When we come over your storage locker,
your storage locker is climate controlled.
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay, good.
And that's actually very important that it's climate controlled, because you said, what is your favorite like item or whatever? It's actually a Sega arcade game from back in the day that used a combination of holograms and sand. And you would create like sand, like castles and stuff and objects. Yeah, no, this was, think of it like AR, augmented reality, before augmented reality was a thing. So what you do is like kids would make shapes and stuff like that in sand, and then there would be like a projection onto the sand. It was pretty. I don't know what it's called. Honestly, I don't remember any of it. I just remember the like, it was rare even in Japan.
Yeah. I saw something like that in a museum recently, but I didn't know that like there was a Sega arcade game where they did that. Like, that's nuts. How old is that? Like, what year did they make that? Do you think?
Oh man, I'd lie to you. I have no idea.
That's fine.
But do you remember when Sega was starting to do that? Like, Sega had started to dabble with projections, holograms, all kinds of stuff like that. I don't know how much actually got to release.
I still think my favorite thing is that whole Sega thing where you can turn upside down, the whole gyro.
The gyroscope thing?
Yeah, that's like I always want to try that, but I never know where they are at.
I think they have one at Galloping Ghost down by Chicago now, but I'm not 100% sure. But
sounds good.
So anyways, that's my prized item. I'll see if I can find what it's actually called.
Okay, so Time Traveler, though, was a Sega. It was a Laserdisc game, but it was released in 91 by Sega, and that was a hologram arcade game. But I don't think it had anything to do with sand. So
yeah, no, what I'm talking about, there was no screen.
Right. Oh, okay.
It was, and I'm saying holograms. It's probably not holograms, probably projections, just like a projected image onto
I got
modifiable sort. Because like you were basically the screen, right? Like the sand. Like, think of it like a big rectangle or whatever that was filled with sand, and you would move these sand, like you'd make these shapes out of the sand, and then there would be like almost like an AR that would go over that. I assure you, I'm not making this up. It exists.
No, now I'm going to have to look it up.
That
sounds awesome.
We'll make a trip and we'll go and play that one of these days.
Yep. We'll head up to your storage locker in, Montreal or something?
Oh man, you guys are I'm gonna get a notification. Your storage locker was broken into.
you just see me like just throwing them all in my car and just like hauling it away.
Yeah. So when you said near, you were talking about, you said you had N64, Super Nintendo stuff in there. Is that also near complete, or is that?
Almost everything is boxed too, eh? Like it's not loose cartridges. Like almost everything, and my NES collection too is quite. It's not near complete or anything, but it's quite, like it's up there. I'd say it's about 3/4 complete, all boxed. I have,
this was back when it wasn't very expensive either. Like
exactly. Yeah. So for your listeners, I think that's or your viewers, I think that's important to note here. I am not a millionaire. I'm not like loaded beyond belief.
You are now.
Like, well, if I sell all of that, yeah. But I just like, again, sometimes life works out in strange ways, and you just happen to be at the right place at the right time without even realizing it. And the truth is, okay, being completely transparent with you guys, I like games. It's as simple as that. And so when that opportunity like presented itself, I was like, like I'll take care of the storage locker, and being like, again, totally transparent with you guys, like I didn't really do much there for, probably like 2 or 3 years. And it's just, life gets in the way, right? Like you move on, you got work, you got other things on your mind. And I vividly remember going back there and going like, oh my, like I never even took an inventory of what is there. And just going in there. And when you start seeing, stuff like I mentioned to you guys, like Magical Chase and stuff, all sealed, and you're like, oh, like there's some pretty cool stuff here. And you go like, I still have like a Turbo Duo sealed, like brand new that we never sold. And you start going through, those capacitors are.
I was really going to say, you probably want to open that up and recap that thing before it melts the box.
Like, yeah, that's it. Serious, for real.
I'm going to blow up your storage locker.
So, just looking around, I was just like amazed at what was actually there, and further to like, the discussion on the Sega Saturn, it's truly sad because when I see that, it's a reminder not of me being some like, ooh, business savvy guy. It's a constant reminder of just how bad the Saturn did, because all of that stuff, should have been in people's hands. Like that should have been sold. And I probably have something ridiculous like 30,000 copies of Virtua Fighter 2, like the more common games, like it's insane how many you end up with in all of this. So as cool as it is bittersweet to me when I go there and I look at some of this stuff, because you're just reminded like, wow, this thing really bombed.
Wow. And you still have all those like 30 copies of Virtua Fighter and all that's in your locker?
No, so most of the stuff, like over the years, most of the stuff I've given to friends. I used to do channel giveaways and stuff like that, where we just give away some random stuff. I used to do local charity events here. Like I've given away like I think like 20 copies of Panzer Dragoon Saga over the years, just to people, because it's sad, like you guys were saying, like some people are, oh, the game is garbage and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, well, you're saying it's garbage because it costs, X number. But, if you've never actually played it, you don't really have the right to comment on any of these things. And so I've tried to do my part to give back. I really have. I've given away a lot of Saturns over the years. I've tried really hard to give back to the community, because like, I don't want to just have a storage locker filled with stuff for no reason, right? Like that's stupid. Like
exactly
enjoying it.
Yeah. Trying to proselytize the Saturn. Well, that's good. I mean, the good thing is whether or not people can afford to own Panzer Saga these days, they definitely owe it to themselves to play it. And I mean, now people are finally getting it. The Saturn didn't stop being a good console just because people weren't playing it, right? It was always good, and it's always going to be good. Like, it's objectively good when its games are just like, there are so many brilliant games on the console. So, the fact that folks nowadays who were just PlayStation back in the day can be like, wow, there's like this whole new console for me to consume all these great games, and it's just like, I mean, for us, we're nostalgic about it, but a lot of folks are just coming to these games for the first time, and it's like they get all this new retro content, So I don't care if they were there day one or if they're finally hopping on the bandwagon now and finding out about how good it is. I mean, that's what we're all about, is we just want more and more people to play it, so that we can share our memories about it and stuff. And while we are still kind of talking about your collection, so that we don't get too far off, I wanted to also mention that right in your name there, Project COE, that's what is that acronym for? Masters of the Universe. It's the
it's something called the
Council.
Council of Elders. Yeah, and it fit because, like I said, we were all like the founding members of COE. We were all Nintendo elders on the Insider message boards, which was like their Sage thing, like that. So it was serendipitous, right? Like it just all sort of fit together.
But you have an extensive Masters of the Universe collection as well.
Oh yeah, man, boy! I hope no one I know listens to this, because they're gonna think I am like Like my day job, I'm a business guy. I'm all professional. I'm like nobody would. They're gonna die of laughter if they heard this. They'd be like, "What?" But yes, I have a complete Masters of the Universe collection, dating back to the original line all the way up to and including the classics line that ended like last year. So that's probably like 800 figures or something like that.
Ben's clapping. He's giving you applause.
Ben's happy.
And I should say that these are all mint on card. All of these.
Wow.
So these are all like, I have like, I'm a huge Masters fan.
And you keep most of that stuff in your house, right? You're not in the storage unit.
Yeah, no, that stuff. Yeah, that stuff.
You got the whole Masters of the Universe room.
Yeah, something like that.
The guest bedroom is just nothing but He-Man.
That's
okay, as a Master of the Universe fan from way back in the 80s, from when they first came out, that is super awesome. I love that.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one. I still have framed my Masters of the Universe fan club membership because from like 1982, 83, something like that.
Yeah, I think Nick and I are both more Pokemon guys than Masters of the Universe people, though.
Yeah, that was just a few years behind me, but it's still good stuff.
Yeah, massive respect. I probably would do the same thing if Pokemon wasn't ungodly expensive.
Yeah.
Oh, well, don't kid yourself, though. Masters isn't cheap, especially those G1 figures. Geez. Like, oh boy.
I was gonna say, how much of that was like collecting over the years and just stuff that you bought later on, where it's like, oh, I really want this.
Yeah, so I just. I've used the word serendipitous once or twice now. I think I've got real lucky with this kind of stuff. So let's just say collecting. I've just been super, super lucky over the years where, like with Masters was one of the first things when eBay launched that I completed my collection. Because what I used to do back in the day is like whenever like there was clearance or anything like that, I wanted the full set of figures. And when eBay first launched, nobody knew what they were doing. Like eBay wasn't what it was today. You used to be able to get, games today that are going for thousands you'd get for $5. Like nobody
exactly.
You had, what was the eBay community? It was like what, 500 people? Something like that. Now you have millions and millions of folks. So I just got really, really lucky that I was able to complete those sets. And then what I did, like, when they launched classics as an example, like I was a member of Matty Collector and stuff like that. So then they just, they give you the figures right to your house. So, but in terms of all of those classic things, I just happened to be seriously like at the right place at the right time. I was super lucky.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's usually how it happens. Like I think I got lucky. Like I collected some SNES stuff back in 2008, and even then it was like $40 for like, I think I paid $40 for a complete in box Kirby's Dream Land 3, which I ended up trading for Magic Knight Rare a little bit later on the line. But it's like you just find like deals like that,
Yeah, and it's just like I find like now you got to be. Like I don't even know what word I would use. It wouldn't be lucky.
You have to have Logan Paul money to be able to afford some of this stuff sometimes.
Yeah, and that's something. Just before we go on, because Dave mentioned a comment that kind of struck a chord with me, which was to say like you guys just want more people to play these games, and one of the things that I'm kind of really sad, especially with the Saturn, is just how many great games can't be played anywhere else. And that, for lack of a better word, just sucks. Because like as much as I love the Saturn and video game preservation, like it would be phenomenal to be able to play a lot of these more obscure or unknown games on either new consoles or PC or whatever. And it's a real shame that
absolutely
that just never happened.
Like Lunacy, for example. I mean, I want
exactly.
more. Yeah. I would love more people to be able to play Lunacy, but even with emulation, like unless I like sat somebody down and said, here you go, here, I've done all the legwork for you. Just go ahead and enjoy it. Like most people will be like, oh yeah, that's cool. I'll check it out. But they probably never will, And so it's like, I feel like we have to do podcasts or videos to try to like make it more easily to digest for them, to understand like, but you never really know what it was like unless you just sit down and play it, And I mean, there's a game where I actually do think that it's art. It's not just a walking simulator. It's not just. Like, and of course it's dated, and I've watched your video on it too, where you talk about it, and it's one of my favorite games on the Saturn. It's one of those things where I do realize that it's an acquired taste, but it's just got so much to it. I feel like there's a lot of folks out there that would love it, but they just probably will never experience it because either the hardware is too expensive or they're not willing to try to like download an emulator and get that whole thing going. And so but you're absolutely right. There are some definite experiences that are just locked down. Shining the Holy Ark being another one of those, right?
Yeah. And just so you know, like that was almost the pick I would have said for my favorite like Saturn game, because I don't know what it is. I've never been able to put my finger on it, but there's just something about that. It was such a huge evolution to Shining in the Darkness, and it was like I love that game. I just absolutely love Shining the Holy Ark.
It's excellent. I mean, some people are put off by the graphic style to begin with because they are like pre-rendered 3D sprites or whatever. But I think once you really get into it, it just hooks you. But I mean, if you have a complete Saturn collection, then that means you also have a lot of really bad games as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I like to joke with people and say like the overwhelming majority is crap because it's dated sports games and things like that. But for all of that, you're left with your really unique experiences, and it does suck that they're locked to a very old piece of hardware only for the sake of new people, because especially like with a game like Shining the Holy Ark, like if you are a Nintendo fan and you start to realize who Camelot is and you start to do a little research into like the background
Mario
of who they are. Yeah, exactly. Like, but you wouldn't believe how many comments I've had from people like, hey, that sound effect, I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah,
and just little things like that.
Yeah, and it's a sadness because like something like Magic Knight Rare is never going to be put on another console because it's just a licensing nightmare in a way. But
absolutely,
there is one game I'm happy that's going to stay on that console forever, and that's Mr. Bones. Just keep that game on there forever, please.
I got a bone to pick with you, Pat.
Well,
no, I was trying to transition. It didn't work out. But what I was getting at was with all those bad games, you must have a most hated Saturn game or a least favorite Saturn game, at least. I'm curious to know.
Okay. It won't be a single game. It's going to be one of the questions. I don't remember if it was you or someone else who asked Tom, but I honestly feel like it is almost the entire launch lineup or shortly after launch, like all those like Gen Wars and like all those weird games where you're just like, why? Like and
Blackfire.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's, so to me it's like it's a combination of all of those. And I know there's like one or two picks that are like famous for people to like, rip apart. But again, living through the whole era, it's really that, because you're coming off Genesis, right, where you brought Nintendo to its knees, and now what? You're Gen War and Blackfire. Yeah,
I think it just suffered from the thing that I call is early 3D graphics and gameplay, because early 3D, like a lot of those Saturn games, are really rough to play, and even now it's like, man.
No, you're saying it wrong. You're saying it wrong, Pat. It's not. It's called creamy 3D graphics.
Yeah, creamy 3D graphics that just make you want to pick up a PS1. But I guess in essence, there's in that weird phase where they want to go all 3D games only and make this awesome, and it's like, but to be fair, the PS1 and N64 also suffered from this. But
yes,
I think a lot of Saturn, especially with the quality of it and the difficulty and that people had with it, was just the prime candidate.
Like two big problems with that, like, because for one, a lot of those companies, like the people that made Bug, they tried making a Sonic game, and then Sega of Japan was like, "Nuh-uh, no, you're not." And like Tom told us straight up that the reason why the Blackfires and Gen Wars of that day existed was because Japan straight up told them to. But another big problem of that time is that a lot of the American developers were just given the worst possible support. They were given really, really crappy dev kits and really crappy manuals late, like after they started making them, and the game
poorly
suffered
translated too
because of that. Yeah, some of the dev manuals just weren't even translated at all, and they just had to kind of flounder.
And it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder how better the Saturn would be if they just focused on those really good 2D games that they're sort of originally going to focus on, and maybe we get more stuff like Symphony of the Night on PS1 than Gen War and all these other ones that were just kind of meh.
And that's actually kind of like my point of why I don't pick a particular, like, you know, one god awful game or whatever, is that, like, even a game, for example, that like I was really looking forward to, like Tomb Raider, right? As an example, like Sega was really doing a good job back in the day of hyping that up as, like, you know, a Saturn exclusive. This is going to be like a big deal. And then obviously we all know what happened there. And I think that was the big thing. So like for all the creamy 3D games that you had, at least with the PlayStation 1 and with the N64, you had those standout titles, right? That you could like latch onto. And that is what I feel the Saturn really missed very early on. Like there wasn't much that you could grab onto and be like, oh, okay, this, you know, yeah, there's all that other garbage, but this is where it's at. And it's like, I feel like if they would have just had a handful, not even like, you know, not like 4 would have done it, like something like that. Because even as an arcade junkie, when you first saw Daytona, Creamy is putting it nicely. Like you were like, what is this? And same with Virtua Fighter.
They were drinking their own Kool-Aid, because if you read the Saturn white paper, it was just like so much ego. It was like they were bringing in their ego from the Genesis days and being like, well, that still stands, right? Because we're Sega, right?
And the thing is that it's funny because looking at the Dreamcast lineup, it was much, much, much stronger coming out the gate than the Saturn ever was. Like, I mean, you had so many great hits.
I do want to say this, coming off of what Pat said, while we're still talking about it. Hypothetically speaking, I really do think that Sega should have done one of two things. Either they stuck with 2D and they didn't do that kind of last minute redesign to the hardware, because the truth is, in the year they did that last minute redesign, they kind of had to throw the book out. They didn't have enough time to work on software development kit. Instead, it was spent retooling the board, and so they didn't have the time to develop a really thought out software development kit and libraries to give the developers. So then when launch came, they literally threw the book at folks. And I mean, it was like volumes this thick of poorly translated Japanese. So either they don't do that and they stick with 2D, right? Like Pat was saying, or they just don't do the early launch, right? And that's it. They decided to go 3D. That splinter of history, I guess you could say. So they decided to go 3D, and it's a done deal. They retool the board. Well, then don't do an early launch. Let the Saturn bake for a little longer. Give them time to work on those development libraries. Give the third-party devs more time to work on those games so that they can be ready for launch. But it's like if they had done one of those two things, then I think it would have been
I just think with the early launch, I think it was just that whole PR and that whole cloud of Sony that was just that's just like strangling them. That it just put the pressure on.
They didn't think nobody thought that Sony was going to be serious competition. Everybody was saying in the media, they kept repeating that same, well, they make Walkmans, they make stereos and TVs. So, they don't know what they're doing. But it's like as soon as they saw that, oh my God, they're catching up to us quick, and on this pace in Japan, at this pace, they will outpace us by next year. So then it's like they start sweating and telling SOA, okay, go ahead and launch it like right away. We need to try to like beat them, to the punch. But I mean, of course, we don't know how that goes.
Yeah, but I think it was in my opinion, that was a perfect storm Like as someone that did live it, right? Like day one, right, being there, I don't think, as much as I know a lot of people said, like if they would have just focused on 2D, the truth is if they would have done that, they would have been dead, completely dead. Because at that point, it was like if you weren't doing 3D, you weren't doing nothing at all. And I remember people were just losing their minds over, the early shots of Mario 64. And it's funny because you're right. Like a lot of people in the media at the time, Sony wasn't the player. Everyone always forgets this, but it's like it was Nintendo. Nintendo was everywhere with their Ultra 64 and like how this is going to revolutionize video games and blah, blah, blah.
And that pretty much kind of flopped.
But even that was a year. Yeah, even that was a year off, right? So it was like Sega was like, "Oh, we don't have to worry about them until '96, and by that time, we'll have our hooks in the market." And all they're doing right now is like Donkey Kong. They're just kind of keeping the SNES on life support with like these pre-rendered 3D games, which, to be honest, did well for themselves. I think Nintendo had a good game plan. The Super Nintendo wasn't selling any less, it was still doing very well, and so was the Genesis. The Genesis was still selling very well. So anyway, I don't want to like rehash all this stuff that we talked about during. I mean, I suppose we can come back to some of this stuff when we recap the panel. But Nick's got next.
Talking about your YouTube channel, you were obviously one of the very first to start talking about this stuff, like all those years ago. And, looking at it, there's still videos getting posted there, not as many of like the Saturn reviews and stuff, but like, what does the, future of your channel look like? And are there any future plans you'd care to share with some of the listeners moving forward?
If you only knew how many comments or messages I get of, where the hell are you? Every day, I swear, I get like 20, 30, 40 messages from people like leaving comments saying like, are you alive? My future plan is to just get back into it. What I miss most is the community. I mean, we're coming up to like 15,000 people that follow our stuff, which is like pretty impressive considering we never did anything, like quote unquote professional. It was all done just a bunch of people talking about games that we like. Right now, the odd video that you'll see, Timothy posts like some Let's Plays and stuff like that. But I'm like the historian, if you will, right? Like I still very much want to finish what I originally set out to do which was basically just to, basically give my impressions of every US Saturn game, minus the sports stuff. And I've done quite a few. If you delete those sports games, like it's very close. I don't know exactly what the tally is that I'm missing, but
it's got to be like roughly 200 or so, maybe a little less, maybe a little more than that. But you definitely got several dozen up there for sure.
Yeah, like I think it was at like around 140 or something like that. Like I got to go back. Honestly, I just got to go back and I'm just hoping that my quote unquote real life here is, if they can get under control, then I can get my life back. But basically what happened was 3 years ago. My goodness, 3 years ago now, I did a full-time MBA while I was working full-time, and that just destroyed, like free time. What's that?
Yeah.
And then of course I finished my MBA and the world decides to end thanks to COVID. So it was just perfect. It's been a perfect storm of my like professional and personal life. So because of that, it's just I haven't had a chance to go back, but that is my goal. My goal is really to go back. I will never match the quality of what's out there today, but it's more just to reconnect with the community and honestly, I just like talking about this stuff.
Nice. Do you think you'll ever do the fabled walkthrough of your storage room with however many thousands of games you got in there?
Well, if I ever do that, you guys will be the first to know, because what I've been thinking of doing is just, no joke, but just inviting a bunch of people to come, because I have no clue what's even there anymore, and I think it would be kind of fun to just have a bunch of gaming fans go through and be like, are you serious? Like with some of this stuff.
Oh, I'm sure we'd make the trip for sure. So That's crazy. If you had to like just another question about that, I'm sorry I keep going back to that storage room, but I know you probably can't quantify an exact amount and especially not an exact value. But do you know, like, if you were to guesstimate how many copies of games were in there, if you were to say like, oh, it's more than 1,000 or more than 2,000, like what would you? Man. Would it be like in the tens of thousands even?
Yeah,
or is it...
yeah, exactly. I think there's probably somewhere around 20,000. Probably.
Jesus. Jared.
Yeah, I know. It's
nuts.
Yeah, because just in my place now, I have about 1,000 here.
Okay.
So, and I'm just looking based on the boxes and stuff that are literally right beside me. If I were to extrapolate that, given the volume of the storage locker, yeah, probably somewhere between 10 and 20,000 games for sure.
Wow. You could open a museum.
You could.
Well, hey, no joke. That was actually something that I was actually thinking of doing, because a lot of this stuff is sealed, like it's
Jesus.
And I'm sure that like some of it, I can't, without going in and actually looking at every single thing, but I'm sure that, there's probably copies of games in there that there may only be like 4 or 5 that exists on planet Earth in that, brand new condition, which that's something that like, people always joke to me, oh yeah, you'll sell. I'm like, I don't actually want to sell that stuff, right. Like I'm not, I didn't do this. Well, it's like I didn't, like we were talking about investments, right? Like before. Well, when you invest in something, you're investing in it to eventually cash out and make money or return on your investment. But the thing is with this that was never the intention. I didn't buy this stuff, one day Panzer Dragoon Saga will be worth millions and give an evil laugh. I'm like, no, like was never ever the intention. My intention was just preservation, was just to make sure that someone somewhere would have these like Saturn games and these PlayStation games, because one day, especially with the Saturn, like I figured that like one day it would just be erased from history, that like no one would know anything about this. So that's really why I have so much respect for what you guys do, because you're keeping that spirit alive. You're keeping this little black box that could alive, and that's awesome.
Well, thank you. And you definitely started that effort too, and excited to hear that at some point, once things calm down with you in your world, you'll eventually get back at it yourself. So that's great.
Yeah, I've been keeping my mic a little bit turned off for a little bit there, because we got into a little bit of the Nintendo 64 topic. And as you can see in my background, I've got the fantastic Nintendo 64 collection, which
I was going to say, you got like 8 of them.
Oh, yeah, I got them all. And I'm really sad they never came out with a translucent yellow. That would have really completed the rainbow spectrum there. And but yeah, so I just like... But I didn't really want to take up all of Jared's time, because we could just really go into all the little different dynamics of everything that happened during like the late 90s and what happened during when Saturn came out and all the 2D, 3D and all the PlayStation and everything. And oh man, that could just really get into some crazy dynamics. But what I really wanted to end up on was really this uplink panel that we did just recently. And so, Jared, what are your thoughts and takeaway from getting to talk to Tom Kalinske himself?
Well, I'll tell you guys, like, I'm so happy I did what I did in inviting you guys over, because the truth, and I realized it instantly, I don't think I ever would have left like 1984, 1985 with him. Like, we would never have even gotten to video games, because he was so charismatic. He was so genuine, like being prepared, having a couple of props and stuff like that. I loved that. And I knew that I would fanboy out if I was alone. And so I was like, there's no chance I'm going to do this alone. I want to share this experience with other people. And I think the highlight truly for me was being able to see all of your faces, especially when, he would say something or give a little joke or show a little prop. Like some of the screen grabs that I've got are just pure gold, because like all of us are just elated to be there and talk to this guy. And it's like I told you, I'm a huge history fan, and like Tom is history. you know, and it's like we actually got to interact with that more than any of the you know the answers to the questions that we had. That for me was just amazing.
It was definitely one of the big ones on my bucket list, and you know, I totally agree. Like, I just, you know, hearing him talk about some of those things that where we understand the story because we've heard it secondhand, you know, just hearing it from him and having him kind of confirm some of those things, you know, it meant a lot. It kind of sucked, you know, like I can tell like the frustration in his voice at times where he's just like, look, I mean, I've repeated this, you know, several times, but it's just like, it is what it is. I didn't have complete control at that point. And I mean, really, that was kind of my exit, you know, so it's like, you know, would be nice to get Stoller on the record about some things, but I don't know how much he's doing, you know, making the rounds on interviews.
Yeah,
these days,
I don't think he's very enthusiastic about Saturn, to be honest.
And yeah, that's the thing is it's like, I'm sure that at the time they were used to being interviewed and having to put up their dukes and like defend, being kind of like a defensive mode all the time. And it's like with us, it's like, we love this system, you know, we're kind of the weird ones that, you know, that we absolutely love this system. And, you know, sure, we can see it for all of its flaws, you know, but at the same time, it's like I was saying the other day, if you changed any one of the things, you know, that made Saturn, it wouldn't be the Saturn that we know, you know, it just would be something different. And I don't even know if we'd all be here, you know, if any part of history had been different, you know. Again, like we create Saturn content because there's a niche there. There's a need, right? But it's like for the same reason I don't create Dreamcast content or Genesis content because there's just a glut of it out there. There's enough people doing that, you know. So it's like you said, you looked around and saw that nobody was doing this stuff. So you felt like there was a void and you wanted to fill it, you know? And so that's the thing. If Saturn had been more successful, I'm not sure that we would even be doing this because there'd be so much competition, you know?
Exactly. There's a reason why we're not a Nintendo podcast.
Right.
Exactly.
Like back in 2010, I think it was like you, Jared, and the occasional classic game room video that like covered like 5th gen Sega stuff, and that was it.
Yeah, so. No, yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think Dave, what you just said, I think is 100% right. And I would probably have been covering TurboGrafx 16 or something like that.
Right? Yeah,
that's another unloved one.
You know, when Tom left, you know, I was like, guys, did I piss him off with that comment about? Well, how did you plan on making money? You know, because he was like, look, I made them a lot of money. You know? And I was just like, I'm so sorry, Tom.
I don't think he was ever mad.
No, but at the same time, like, it was like, there was real emotion there. Like, he was like, look, like people try to paint this picture a certain way. And I'm here to tell you that like, he was like saying, you know, I raised their stock prices, you know? And so, you know, I mean, he had a plan, right? He had a plan. He just wasn't able to execute on it. That's the thing is Tom, in order to see his plan through to completion, he had to be able to execute on it and have like full autonomy. And he just didn't, you know? So I know there's folks out there that it's like, don't want us to defend certain folks or certain decisions that were made, but it's like, they got to realize that, you know, at the end of the day, if you don't have complete control and you're the CEO, you know, what can you do really, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I felt more bad when I did the questions. I kept getting shot down about the working designs, and the other one, it's like, sorry.
Yeah.
No, but like I don't know. Like you can really see that he probably thinks exactly like we do, where it's like, how is it even possible? On what planet does it make any sense for someone to essentially make Sega a household name and then be pretty much ignored? And that you could see it in his body language, you know, that it doesn't make sense. Like there is no, I understand, like, you know, you can do the research, you can find out why like Sega of Japan did what they did, and that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, like what Tom Kalinske and his team did for Sega was never done again, you know. And and for them to just basically be like, no, here's Gen War, have fun. It's painful, and you could see it. And that was the thing that like I really took away most from this, was like, it still bothers him, that like he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do,
because he has a sterling track record, and that's something that he prides himself on. That's why it's easier for him to speak, with nostalgia about the Sonic era, or about the, Masters of the Universe and Barbie and stuff, because like those were plans from conception to completion where he was able to execute and prove that, it worked, and I mean, so those are memories that, he can hang on his metaphorical wall. I mean, he probably has plaques or something that he hangs on his wall, but I mean, it's like, I would feel bad too, because I'm darn sure that despite Saturn's hangups as a console, us being able to love it so much like we do and think that it's such a great console means that it was a great console. And if you had the right guy to market it, I think it could have done well, And so I do believe that if he had been given that control, that things might have gone a little differently. I'm not saying that it would have won out against Sony. I mean, because they've made spectacular decisions as well, over the years, and they've just done so many things right, So, I mean, kudos to Sony and the PlayStation for being such a great console with a vast library of great games, but it's got a lot of crap games too, and it's like, if Tom would have just been able to, market the Saturn the way that it needed to be in the West, it might have gone a little bit better, because it's still a great console. And I think we all agree about that.
I was just sort of thinking, having grown up during the Genesis era, I've really got Tom Kalinske to, thank for my love of gaming. Like at the time, it was between the NES and the Sega Master System, and nobody cared about the Master System. I didn't care about the Master System, but the Genesis came, and it was Tom's and his way of marketing it and what have you that made it such a household name, and it really sort of invested me into Sega. And so ultimately, when it was time for the next round of consoles, for me, without having seen any of the specs or seeing any of the games or whatever, I knew that I would be getting a Saturn over whatever Nintendo would be putting out or whatever Sony may have been designing at the time. So he not only got my dollars, that day when I bought a Genesis, but he also got my loyalty. So if he hadn't come along and done what he did with the Genesis, would I still have been the Saturn fan that I am today? Like, with the Saturn would have surely still come along, but Tom was so instrumental in creating that hardcore group of loyalists. And yes, some of them obviously fell off and went over to Sony or even Nintendo, but where would Sega have been without the guy? And, even in Japan, I mean, the Mega Drive there was not doing very well. It was outsold by both the Super Famicom and NEC's PC Engine. So, him making Sega as much money as he did during the Genesis era, did that fund things in Japan in the Saturn era? So like, to me, I think it's very understated, the influence that he had on the company as a whole. And again, this is, just from the perspective of the young boy who grew up on the Genesis and eventually became a huge Saturn fan. But for me, it really seems like he gets the bad rap for the unsuccessful Saturn launch. But without Tom Kalinske, would we even have had a Saturn launch? I mean, obviously it would have come here, but if the Genesis had done poorly, it may have been a super low-key launch, and Sega... I mean, everybody knew what the Saturn was. What if, without Tom Kalinske, the Saturn launch had been comparable in hype and consumer awareness to how the 3DO was? Like, I really think that Tom is way more important in Sega's history, especially outside of the Genesis, than people actually give him credit for.
Agreed.
Well said. No, I was just going to say that, like, I 100% agree with you, Peter. I think, and that's one of the things why I said my comment earlier, where, like, in what planet does this even make sense where this could occur? Because without Tom and his team, would the Genesis have ever, been able to do what it did. There's a reason they hired Tom. People kind of forget that, because he wasn't CEO when Genesis first launched. And there's a reason Sega brought him on. They trusted him. They let him do his thing. They basically reset the Sega Genesis with Sonic, and then they never look back. If you look at the market share from when Sonic was introduced and all of the marketing and all the tactics that they use, it literally just skyrocketed after that particular point in time. And I often think that, like, if Tom never would have been hired, what would have happened? Like, would Saturn have just been, like almost like an afterthought launch here? I don't know. I don't know, but I do think that, like, Tom and his team deserve way more credit than history gives them. And I always wondered, like, what would have happened had Tom been the real CEO of Sega Corp, not Sega of America, because then those discussions with Silicon Graphics and all those organizations, right? Like, the hardware could have been fundamentally different. And I just, it's a shame. I wish we could have some sort of a device that we could do a what if and see what would have happened.
I absolutely agree. And basically, with Sega, around the Genesis era, during the Tom Kalinske era, with the successes of Sega, Sega was coming out with all these different hardware technologies and just trying things out and throwing things out there. The 32X, the different control mechanisms that they came out with. I can't remember the one with the motion that you put on the floor. But the Sega CD, the Saturn, the Dreamcast, all these different things, and just throwing them out into the wild. And it was almost kind of like Google at the time, where Google was just basically letting their developers come out with different technologies like Google Plus and Google everything, and just letting them develop. It's kind of weird how similar that was, as far as in my mind, how that works.
Yeah, no, exactly.
All right, well, thank you for listening to Sega Saturn Shiro. I want to thank Jared, aka Project COA, for coming on the podcast. Did you want to plug some of your stuff before we head out?
Sure. Just if anyone's looking for some old, and I mean that now quite literally, videos for Saturn or other classic games, be sure to check out youtube.com/projectcoe for a whole bunch of crazy videos on your favorite retro gaming systems, and hopefully some new videos in the not too distant future.
Yeah, make sure to check out Pandemonium Reviews on YouTube, and check out the Sega Saturn Shiro on our stuff, so YouTube, Podiant, wherever podcasts are not sold. And yeah, thank you again for coming on as a guest, and thank you for having us do the panel with you. I know I really enjoyed talking with Tom Kalinske. I'm speaking for all of us saying that we did as well.
So still can't thank you enough, Jared, for that.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
You don't need to thank me, guys. Thank you for participating. It was a moment we will have in our memories forever.
Yes,
exactly, and they can't take that away from us, right?
Right. Yeah, unless they delete every recording.
And if you guys are listening to this podcast, whenever you're listening to it, and you haven't watched the panel, it will have been uploaded by now, and you should go and watch it.
Thank you again for listening, and remember, you must play Sega Saturn. Thank you again for listening, and remember, you must play Sega Saturn. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get some duct tape and duct tape some Ethernet to a wall.
And he's out.
So random.
But in all seriousness, that actually is what I have to do in like a little bit. My roommate got Ethernet, and I have to help him duct tape it to a wall. So.
Oh hell yeah! 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 Oh hell yeah!